Hey there! Tonight we're diving into what unfolded after the Black Death finally released its grip on Europe. And believe me, this isn't your standard history class material. We're exploring one of the most radical transformations in human civilization when Europe essentially had to reconstruct itself completely from scratch. Oh, and if these deep dives resonate with you, I'd genuinely appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm always fascinated by where everyone's tuning in from, so leave a comment with your city and the current time there. It constantly amazes me how people worldwide are drifting off to these stories. All right, settle into that comfortable position. Take a deep, relaxed breath and allow your body to completely relax into whatever surface you're resting on. We're journeying back to 1453, and trust me, you'll be extremely thankful for that mattress once we're finished. So, congratulations. You've just awakened in England 35 years after the Black Death tore through Europe like an unprecedented catastrophe. The positive news? You're alive. The negative news? Well, let's simply say the world you once knew has vanished completely. You open your eyes, and the initial sensation that registers isn't visual, it's auditory, or rather, what's absent from the auditory landscape. No morning commotion from the town center, no youngsters playing in the lanes, no pounding from the metalsmith's workshop, just stillness. That oppressive, unnatural silence that descends upon locations where far too many souls once resided. Your body aches as you extend your limbs. That profound exhaustion that emerges from laboring harder than your physical form desires. Yet nowadays, everyone who remains labors harder than they ought to. There's simply no alternative. You shift position, sensing the coarse, straw-filled mattress underneath you. At minimum, you possess a mattress currently. Prior to the pestilence, serfs like yourself rested on bare earth with perhaps some tattered cloth for insulation. However now, well, when 50% of the population perishes, suddenly there's considerably more possessions to distribute. Peculiar how that functions, isn't it? You sit upright gradually, allowing your vision to acclimate to the faint illumination penetrating through the solitary modest window. The dwelling itself is more spacious than your childhood home. It previously belonged to the grain miller and his household. All 6 of them expired within a week's span back in 1348. Their remains were interred in the cemetery alongside countless others. They had to excavate communal burial pits. These days you attempt not to contemplate that excessively. The floorboards protest beneath your feet. Actual timber flooring, not merely compacted soil. You inherited more than simply a residence when the plague completed its devastation. There's a storage chest in the corner containing garments that actually fit properly, a legitimate cooking vessel suspended over the hearth. Even a pewter drinking vessel, which previously was something only prosperous traders could obtain. Amusing aspect about catastrophes, they possess a method of redistributing prosperity, just not in any manner you'd ever desire. You pull on your tunic, wool rather than the coarse hemp you wore previously. It's a pleasant sensation, warm against your flesh. But there's perpetually that subtle voice in the recesses of your consciousness reminding you that this tunic previously belonged to someone who expired choking on their own vital fluids. You attempt not to contemplate that either. Outdoors, your exhalations form miniature vaporous clouds in the morning atmosphere. September in England has perpetually been frigid, but somehow it seems colder currently. Perhaps it's simply because there are fewer individuals to warm the environment with their existence. Or perhaps when you've witnessed as much mortality as everyone has, everything seems slightly colder. The village of Little Wickham resembles a mouth with half its dentition removed. Residences stand vacant, their entryways hanging ajar like slack mandibles, gardens grown untamed, barriers deteriorating. In the distance you can observe fields that should be golden with grain, yet instead they're brown and barren, nobody remaining to harvest them. Prior to the plague, this village contained perhaps 200 souls, currently maybe 60, on a favorable day. Your stomach protests, sharp and insistent. That's the aspect they neglect to mention about surviving disasters. You still experience hunger. Existence continues, even when it seems like it shouldn't. You walk toward the village center, past the well where individuals used to congregate and exchange gossip. The wooden pail hangs there, rope deteriorated and water level depleted. Maintenance is, well, everything concerns maintenance currently. There simply aren't sufficient hands to maintain operations the manner they previously functioned. The baker's establishment remains shuttered, has been for 3 years currently. Thomas the baker perished along with his spouse and 2 sons. His apprentice attempted to maintain operations for a period, but bread creation isn't something you simply acquire overnight. The few loaves he managed to produce were, let's simply state, they were sufficiently dense to utilize as construction materials. These days, individuals bake their own bread, or attempt to. Turns out substantial knowledge perished with the plague. All those modest skills that individuals transmit from parent to offspring vanished, simply vanished. You can detect wood smoke drifting from the direction of the manor residence, Lord Edmund's property. He survived, though barely, lost his spouse, his 3 offspring, most of his household personnel. Currently it's just him, his remaining steward, and perhaps a dozen servants where there used to be 50. Poor unfortunate soul actually has to perform some of his own labor currently. Can you envision? But here's where circumstances become intriguing. And this is the component that would have been inconceivable prior to the plague. You're not going to bow and grovel when you encounter him. You're not going to tug your forelock and mumble, "Yes, my lord," and "No, my lord," like your father did. Because Lord Edmund requires you more than you require him. See, when half the population expires, suddenly the individuals who remain become exceedingly valuable. Supply and demand, medieval style. Your feet produce crunching sounds on the frost-covered vegetation as you make your way toward the manor. Today's the day you're going to request increased compensation. 3 months prior, you would have been flogged for even contemplating such a notion. But 3 months prior, Lord Edmund possessed other alternatives. He doesn't anymore. The manor residence looms ahead, stone walls that used to seem so imposing. Currently, they simply resemble expensive walls surrounding an increasingly vacant house. Most of the windows are shuttered closed. No-purpose heating chambers nobody utilizes. You strike the heavy wooden door. 3 sharp impacts that reverberate in the morning stillness. Footsteps approach, slow and measured. The steward opens the door. Richard, a man who used to possess 3 assistants. Currently, he performs everything himself. "Morning, Thomas," he states. His voice carries that particular weariness that everyone possesses now, the exhaustion of individuals attempting to accomplish too much with too little. "Morning, Richard. Need to converse with his lordship." Richard elevates an eyebrow. Prior to the plague, peasants didn't simply demand audiences with lords, but these aren't pre-plague times. "He's in the solar. I'll inform him you're here." You wait in the great hall, and even here you can observe how substantially things have transformed. The tapestries are dust-covered. There's nobody remaining to maintain them properly. The lengthy tables where dozens of individuals used to consume meals, most of them pushed against the walls and concealed with fabric. Lord Edmund materializes at the top of the staircase. He's smaller than you recall, thinner. The plague didn't terminate him, but it aged him 20 years in 5. His garments are fine quality, but they hang loose on his frame. Even the wealthy don't consume as well as they used to. "Thomas," he states, descending the stairs with careful dignity, "Richard mentions you desired to converse with me." "Yes, my lord. Regarding my wages." The words suspend in the atmosphere between you. A year prior, hell, 6 months prior, this conversation would have concluded with you in the stocks. But Lord Edmund simply exhales like a man who's had this conversation excessively many times already. "What are you receiving currently?" 2 shillings weekly. But John over in Great Wickham, he's receiving 3 shillings for identical labor, and they're providing an additional measure of grain. Lord Edmund's jaw constricts. "John's perpetually been—" He halts himself, inhales deeply. "What precisely are you requesting?" 3 shillings. "And I desire Sundays off, properly off, not merely morning service, and then return to labor." The old Lord Edmund would have erupted, summoned the guards had you beaten. But the old Lord Edmund possessed 50 laborers to select from. This Lord Edmund possesses you and perhaps 5 others. He gazes out the window at his fields, brown stubble where golden grain should be undulating, fields that require plowing for winter wheat, labor that must be completed, and insufficient individuals to perform it. 2 shillings and 6 pence, he states finally. "And Sunday afternoons off?" You pretend to deliberate this, though honestly it's more than you anticipated. But you've learned something significant in these past few years. When someone requires you more than you require them, you possess power. "Agreed," you state, extending your hand. He shakes it, a lord shaking hands with a peasant. Your grandfather would have collapsed. As you walk back through the village, you pass the churchyard. The original cemetery was filled by the time the plague finished, so they excavated new sections. Then those filled up. Currently, there are graves scattered around the church like fallen foliage. Yet existence somehow continues progressing. You observe Margaret suspending laundry behind her cottage. She's wearing a dress that's excessively fine for a widow, but her husband had been the village's most successful merchant before he expired. Currently, she owns his enterprise, such as it is. Women inheriting property, operating their own establishments. Another phenomenon that would have been impossible previously. Strange how catastrophe generates opportunities. She waves at you and you wave back. Perhaps later, when the labor's completed, you'll stop by, share some ale, converse about how circumstances used to be, and maybe, if you're both in the appropriate mood, you'll discuss how circumstances might be, because that's the aspect nobody mentions about surviving disasters. Eventually, you commence contemplating the future again. Your stomach rumbles once more, reminding you that survival still requires the fundamentals: nourishment, shelter, labor. But as you head toward your own fields, the ones you're renting currently that you can afford, you're contemplating more than simply getting by. You're contemplating getting ahead.